3, 2, 1. He's not just a historian, he's a SatAM historian. I don't know. I was trying to think of a catchphrase for our special guest. I can't think of anything. Sorry.
Very epic catchphrrise, 100% way past.
Yeah. He's
Not our best cold opens, folks. We're sorry.
Yeah. He's the SatAM historian. He remembers it, so you don't have to. Or I don't know.
Luckily, I don't think that's copyrighted. But
I've always considered myself more of a James Rolfe than a Doug Walker. Gotta say.
You get angry more.
Yeah.
No. I guess they both get pretty angry.
But James
though.
Rolfe's just like a. Yeah, well, AVGN's more of a like James is just a really chill guy outside of the AVGN persona. But anyway, yeah. Hello, I am Jacob Berkeley, the SatAM historian. I also go by Groovy Jake or good old Groovy Jake, and I somehow ended up in here, this podcast.
The grooviest Jacobus.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Radrey. Welcome to Sonic Host Coast to Coast. I'm joined today by Malzilla and, of course, our very special guest, the SatAM historian Jake, or good old Groovy Jake. Or would you call yourself old Groovy Jake?
No, I'm not old.
Not old.
No,
well, some people say
Groovy Jake. Groovy Jake is fine.
Groovy Jake. Okay.
Grooviest Jacobus.
Or just call me Jake. Whatever works.
Okay.
Whatever works, Jakes. Well, thank you for being on the show. Again, as I kind of mentioned off recording, you've been highly recommended, and since we kind of been talking about SatAM pretty much for the last few months, a few breaks here and there. Yeah, thanks for coming in and bringing some of that knowledge as we kind of wrap up our thoughts on SatAM.
Yeah,
I do love SatAM. It is it's not a perfect show by any means, but it's a very good show, I feel, and I respect a lot about it, especially due to how much passion was put into the production of the series by the writers and all of the people involved. It's a really cool series.
Yeah, I'm really kind of sad that we have to stop covering on the show because I mean it's like really fun to just go through all of it. I mean, well, one thing I didn't remember that on this rewatch is how much inconsistency there is and how like it plays with my mind in some ways.
Inconsistency? What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean like what is it? Like the Lake of Rings, right? It changes. It's no longer the Lake of Rings the way it looks in the pilot, or just some of the backgrounds change, or it's just these like small little inconsistencies that they really kind of throw me off, and they give me like these weird Mandela effects. Because like Malzilla and I.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the reason for that is simply that the writers, when writing, they didn't have like a map. They never like made like an actual map of the series and what everything exactly looked like, where everything was. They basically just wrote a script and then they let the animators and artists deal with what they wrote. So if there needed to be a certain place in Knothole, then that's what they'd make for the show in the art department. But it wasn't always consistent from episode to episode. Though fans have tried to make like fan maps and everything based on the series.
Right.
That's usually the case. The fans get a little bit more involved than the production staff for the logistics of it all.
And that's actually how we know that like the reason why everything's really inconsistent, because a fan was trying to make a map of the SatAM world and Knothole, and they basically messaged Ben Hurst about it, and he basically said they never really had like an internal map of Knothole or anything. It was always just they wrote stuff and then the artist drew it.
Right. It's always kind of funny, like when fans kind of realize that things weren't as structured in the production that they are, because I'm a big Dragon Ball fan, so one thing I've learned from people who are much more knowledgeable about Toriyama and the Dragon Ball process is just like they're like, oh yeah, Toriyama wrote most of that stuff like on the fly
On
from
the
the seat of
fly.
his pants, and
Yeah.
it's just kind of like, but they're like, but these themes and all. I'm like, bro, it ain't that deep. The whole reason Super Saiyan is blonde is because he didn't want to ink in the hair. I mean, it's a lot of this stuff is just hacks. Like we need to do something, and what's the easiest way to do it? Boom, there, and then we get obsessed about it and try to rewrite the deep lore when it wasn't so deep to begin with. So.
No, yeah, but this show in particular, I mean, I was watching speaking of Nostalgia Critic, who I cited earlier, I was watching a panel with him, and some people were asking him about Sonic SatAM, and I'm thinking about clipping this and putting it on my Twitter, because his reaction to, just hearing Sonic SatAM was just like, everybody in the room just like lit up. They're like, oh, yeah, and like, that was like, it was one of those shows where they made these characters, and they didn't, hit you over the head with the environmental message, because at that time it was just really popular to make a cartoon about an environmental message, right? And
Captain Planet.
Yeah, Captain Planet, or I don't know. One of my favorites, Toxic Crusaders. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Hilarious
that was
that
actually
was
really
kind of the
funny. Is
message.
that was one of his early reviews? Is he did a SatAM Adventures of combo review.
Yeah, that's one of his classic ones. I haven't watched Nostalgia Critic in a while.
Oh, now that
But
I know he's been
I do
streaming.
remember that.
He did actually stream Sonic Generations, Shadow Generations not too long ago. He seemed to enjoy it, oddly enough. So he might be a secret Sonic fan. He just doesn't know it.
Doug Walker, classic Sonic fan, and of course, star of the fan film Sonic the Hedgehog.
Well, that's right. I forgot he did that too. That's funny.
Yeah, for some reason, it's it's so weird because he's just in it and it's so out of place. But yeah,
maybe that's what we need to do. We need to have Doug Walker be the leading voice for Sonic Set. Maybe that actually
I don't think that'd be a good idea.
Why? Why would that be an awful idea?
I don't know.
I'm curious.
Just like a lot of things. I mean, of course, there's the whole change the channel stuff that happened a few years ago.
Right.
But also just because, that's kind of why I think that'd be not a great idea.
He seemed to bounce back from that pretty well. I mean, he just kind of just ignored it, and it kind of just went away.
Still, I don't know if I'd consider him a paragon of great ideas.
Okay, all right. I mean, he has a strong following, but
Yeah, it just depends. I get what you mean, but I do think it would be cool if we had someone who is well respected in the review sphere who did support SatAM, because we don't have. I mean, we do have some of those. There are reviews online of people talking about Sonic SatAM, and I always think those are really cool. And of course, we have a ton of people talking about Archie Sonic. There was that whole YouTuber who did an 11-hour analysis of the Archie Sonic comics.
Was that Low? Yeah, his stuff. I mean, we've talked about it before. I know. Radrey just had Nick the Game Apologist on the Sonic Historian show that he does, and they're talking about one of the things Nick does has been Sonic speed reading, where mostly he's been doing the IDW comics, but he's also said he's always wanted to do the Archie stuff, but didn't know how to approach it because, let's be honest, Archie is Mount Everest when it comes to it's where do you even begin? You just start.
It is a roller coaster ride in quality, I will say.
Oh, absolutely. I've
read all of the pre-reboot comics. It is an experience.
It's a ride. It's a ride for sure. But kind of if I wrap up my thought real quick, is that Nick was saying that it's Low Art's given the YouTube audience arguably the best multi-video coverage of Archie Sonic by looking at the different characters. Silver, Shadow, Sonic, Sally, Knuckles. He's done it the best, and it's I get it. I mean, I'd love to cover Archie, but I don't even know where to begin, honest.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, regarding Low Art, what I like about his stuff is that he approaches it as someone who doesn't immediately want to bash everything. Like, he makes jokes and stuff, but you can always tell it's really lighthearted in that regard, and it's never really, like,
Not
super
malicious.
cynical negative. Yeah, exactly. A lot of Archie Sonic or SatAM reviewers, I just feel like they always go at it at this angle of, like, everything was by Ken Penders. That was, like, yes, a lot of the early stuff was by Ken Penders, but, like, not everything was. There was Mike Gallagher. There was Ken's writing partner who wrote a lot of the comic with him. There was Carl Bollers. There was Ian Flynn. There's a ton of people who wrote for the Archie Sonic comics, and it wasn't just Ken's vision. Sure, he did lay a lot of the groundwork, and yeah, not all of it was great. And I don't like all of his comics, especially the later stuff once he started getting into Knuckles stuff and pretty much all the way
Yeah.
until he left the comic. But I do think some of the earlier stuff is overhated because people do forget sometimes. They really do forget how this comic was big. It had a fan base. I have done research into the old Sonic mailing lists, and almost all of them were about the Archie Sonic comics. And this was before issue 50. This was when Ken was the main writer of it. People often forget that Ken was a respected figure in the earlier years. It wasn't until, you know, Twitter came along that a lot of his questionable stuff and a lot of his
Well,
more
he brought a
negative
lot of that
attributes.
on him. A lot of that on himself.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not. Yeah, like I'm not defending Ken. I don't really care for him either. Not gonna lie. I mean, I still don't forgive him for what he did to Ben Hurst. But I, but like, I just feel that there's just this mindset that since Ken was involved with so much of the Archie comics, everything was done by him and everything sucked, which I don't agree with. I think that some of Ken's work was all right. I think a lot of it wasn't great, but he did lay a lot of good groundwork, and I feel like a lot of the later writers did do a lot of good with his work. Like, I really like Julie Sue, even though Ken created her and didn't really do a whole lot with her. I just feel like there are
Except
lots
for,
of Ken
the
created
soul
a lot.
touch. Except for soul
Yeah,
touching.
that
But yeah,
that 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 yeah.
I was gonna say I'm of the
You go.
same mind. I've loved a lot of his characters. Like that, once other writers started writing them, they became a lot more fun. Like Elias
Yeah.
under Ian, like he completely did a 180 with the character because you know Elias's whole purpose for like 75 issues was just like, and he didn't want to cause drama, but his presence caused drama, and I felt bad for him because it's like he's just uncomfortable being here, and like and all the stuff with Max and Jeffrey and all that. But my
Oh
favorite
yeah.
character has always been like Leon Daw, and it's fun because Sonic hasn't had a whole lot of female villains, and she was just wonderfully petty and just got all of her comeuppance. But then Ian got a hold of her and made her more interesting. And sometimes you feel a little bad for like maybe 5 seconds, but then it's like, no, no, she deserved it.
Uh, I wanna sort of move back to SatAM, but I will say with Lee and don't forget that Carl Bollers also set a lot of the groundwork with her with the whole
Return
Return
Angel
to
Island.
Angel Island arc.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
that was. You're right.
I just
Him and
don't want
John Gray.
people to yeah, I just don't want people to forget Carl Bollers because that's a very common thing with Archie discussions is they separate it into the Ken Penders era and the Ian Flynn era, and I feel that a lot of them skip over the Carl Bollers stuff, which I don't really like. But
That's probably
speaking
why nobody
of
talks about it. But yeah, I don't
yeah,
know. There's some I can't say his name. Carl Bowler's. Forgive me, Carl, if you're listening. I don't think he is. Uh,
you said that like
Give
he
us
was God. You
Federativus.
said that like
Give
he
us
was you said
Federativus,
that like he
and
was a
I will
god.
always hold him in high regards for that. Because
Yeah.
Federativus was the best Knuckles villain ever.
Yeah.
Even
I
better
will
than
say
Enerjack.
though, going back to SatAM, especially recently when I've been going into the production materials and seeing a lot of the earlier concepts for the show, I am very always interested in how Archie adapted certain things. Notably, I recently recently sort of discovered that SatAM Nogus's name is not spelled how it is in Archie. It's Nagus, not Naugus like in Archie. That's how it was spelled
Okay.
on. That's how it was spelled on the original model sheets. Uh, so it is interesting because I'm pretty sure with Archie they didn't get a lot of the later SatAM material. Like earlier on, they did get a lot of material about the pilot and stuff, which is why a lot of earlier designs appear in those early issues. But with and I can't speak either. But a lot of the later stuff didn't come until they were nearing issue 50 because they thought that that was going to be the final issue for a good while. And which is why it was, such a big deal, the whole in-game storyline. Uh, but it is interesting because there's some stuff that they clearly adapt from SatAM without really, knowing all of the details or keeping all of it consistent, such as in the comics, they made the king uh, a squirrel, when in the SatAM series, he was a fox. Uh, they also gave him the name Max, which later, when the series was rebooted, his name was turned to Nigel, which is in turn a reference to his voice actor Tim Curry, who also voiced Nigel Thornberry.
Kilo
And
Khan, as
it
I
is,
referenced in our review. I mean, Tim Curry was in a bunch of things. He's one of the great voice actors of our time. So yeah, it was
oh
one of the
yeah,
things. Kind of going in that vein. When we were doing reviews for Blast from the Past, The Void, The Wolf Pack, we talked a lot about how these were the episodes that really felt like all the Archie writers really started to mine for details.
yeah,
And that was really cool. We ended up talking a
yeah.
lot
Like
about Archie those episodes.
yeah, you can see a lot of season two, in Archie, when they, at least in the era following the Gallagher style of humor, when they start going more serious, you can tell it's a lot more inspired by elements from season two with Naugus, King, um, the Void or Sanctuary. Like it's all clearly very much inspired by the cliffhanger and the whole season two sort of deal. And it's really interesting in my opinion because Archie is sort of like it's not the same universe, not in any sense of the word. It's very much a disconnected thing, but it clearly spawned from it, similar to how the books, the Troll Associates books spawned from the SatAM series, and it's interesting seeing how they go off in their own directions. That's one of the things I find interesting.
Well, it's kind of one of the funny things. Kind of, I've said this a bazillion times through our review episodes. I'll keep saying it. Is season one, looking back on it of SatAM, it very reminds me a lot of kind of the current IDW in that it's very consistent. It's not super great. It's not super terrible. There's a couple good ones here and there, but it's pretty even keel. Where season two, you had a lot more higher highs, but a lot more lower lows, much like the Archie run. So that's how something I've always kind of like looked at and analyzed over the last few months. I'm like, okay,
I'm guessing in regards to the lower lows, you're referring to the Antoine episodes.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I'll be honest. I had a mini rant when we were talking about the last couple episodes and just kind of thoughts. It's like the Odd Couple short was fun. That was harmless. It made me laugh. If you took, say, either I think the one where they, even though it was a dumb one, the one with the ghosts training tails out in the wilderness, if you just kept those two and just did a single one, toss out Rebecca, toss out the hyena biker gang, and gave the Doomsday Project a part one episode and a part two episode, I think things would have been a lot better. Because
Well, I bet you'd be glad to know that Ben Hurst and the writing team also wanted that because they
Did
were
they?
forced to make the Antoine episodes.
someone had mentioned
The
that to me, and I was going to ask you about that. So thank you for confirming that.
Yeah, essentially what happened is Ben-Hur, they had more stuff planned for season 2, which they had to cut because of the network demanding more humor with the Antoine episodes, which led to the 2 dual episode shorts and everything. And they didn't really like them either. They just kind of had to do them because the network demanded it.
So
It's definitely why
ABC,
those stick
so
out.
ABC were Antoine fans. They were the OG Antoine stans, huh?
Oh my gosh. Maybe. It's just the reason why they feel so out of place and so low compared to everything else is because they didn't really want to make them. They had other stuff planned for the season which had to be cut. There was a whole set of jungle freedom fighters they apparently
I
had
Oh,
heard about
really?
worked
those
out
guys.
that yeah, that had to be cut out of the season. And not only that, but there I don't know if you guys have the DVD set, but there's a deleted scene on it which features Sonic training Tails. And it was very integral because it was gonna into season 3 with the whole development of Tails into kind of his own character with his own powers and speed that's arguably faster than Sonic's. And they cut it because there wasn't enough time, and it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I was gonna say because that was the whole thing with the Druid Henge episode that when we were going over that, it's like that felt really like Tails, graduation episode where he had gone from just the kid character in season 1 to now he's Sonic's official sidekick, almost a la Adventures of, which and then
Yeah.
obviously throughout the ages, Sonic and Tails doing their thing. When you say, I ask with a lot of this cut content, alliteration. I love it and I hate it. One thing that kind of surprised me when I was doing the rewatch with Radrey, and Radrey, you and I have talked about this a lot, is I didn't remember that Bunny did not get a whole lot to do over the seasons, and I just felt like, but
Yeah.
I remember her being prominent, but she half the time she was just standing next to Sally, and I'm like, that feels wrong.
Yeah.
So,
I
were there
gotta
any
be
bunny
honest.
plans?
I'd have to check if there's any bunny plans. Uh, I do know that it was never said, he never said yes or no, in regards to whether, characters like Chuck or Bunny would eventually get de-roboticized because he didn't really want to get into spoilers. But he did say that he left the possibility open, and it's why he was personally against Ken making the roboticization permanent in Archie.
Mhm.
Uh, it's pretty. It is strange that Bunny. It's always just so weird to me when looking into it. Like the network was like, we need another girl character to appeal to girls, and that's why we got Dulcie. But it makes me wonder why they didn't just focus
Yep,
more on
bunny right
Bunny.
there.
Yeah, exactly. It's been so strange to me because it almost feels like in a lot of these discussions they never even brought up Bunny as a character.
That's a shame.
It
Justice for Bunny
it's such a
Robot.
Yeah, it's such a shame because she literally is such an interesting character, even from the little we see of her in SatAM. She's so likable. She has a struggle that she's dealing with, but it's never explored to the extent it can be.
And
It's
even
it's definitely a
today,
shame.
like on Sonic boards like Reddit, like when you get the typical how would you bring the Freedom Fighters back? And of course you get the laundry list of people saying, oh, they don't belong, they don't fit. There's still a lot of people say, well, Bunny would be perfect. Like especially in modern Sonic, you have all the wisps and her little Mega Buster. Like again, Bunny is cool, and I wish you had I wish they had used her a lot. Now, if I can pivot again, I know you mentioned Dulcie, and I did know that that's why they brought Dulcie in. They wanted another girl character. We were rewatching season 2, and I had Dulcie was I had always kind of remembered almost in the same vein as Antoine, where it was just
She's
kind
not
of
that bad.
slapstick comic relief. But then I remember watching it, and I realized Dulcie's actually pretty great. She is a little
Yeah, she
slapstick,
definitely
but
gets
she's
too
a
much.
lot better than Antoine. Antoine
Yeah,
was.
she
She could
gets
be
a lot of
sassy
hate
too.
that I yeah, I just feel like she gets a lot of hate because she just came out of nowhere. and they wish that like characters like Bunny and Rotor got more attention, which I agree with. But at the same time, Chelsea was never that bad. Sure, her shtick of like "I'm coming home, ma," crashing got a little old after a while, but like she was not the worst aspect of the show at that point by far. She was fine. I never got the extreme hate for Dulcie.
Yeah, I was kind of, I was making we made a couple jokes of like the Dulcie crash counter, take a shot every time she crashes or gets a concussion. It's like, oh, well, this may be a bad idea. We're going to be sloshed before we know it. And then,
Brain damage on multiple occasions.
multiple occasions. And, she,
Be just like
basically,
Dulcie.
just like Dulcie. And then I kind of made my Game of Thrones joke. Sally's just riding around on her pet dragon the entire season. I'm like, Sally did it first. Sorry, Danny. But yeah, like, I really enjoyed Dulcie. I think I appreciate her character a lot more. And even what Ian kind of did with her in the reboot of Archie was kind of interesting too. So um
Yeah, I always found it strange how at some points Archie did amazing things with some characters and then did the complete opposite of a good thing with some of these characters. I feel that the one character that undeniably got I think the one
worse.
character that undeniably was done better was Antoine.
Oh,
At least
absolutely.
like once he and Bunny became a thing, it really became a situation of they make each other better. And it's why, even though I get why people found it annoying that Ken just undid Carl's whole thing of Antoine being like turned evil due to like, war and everything, I wasn't against it because honestly, I thought that was a stupid idea from Carl. Like, I
Yeah, I
love
mean,
Carl, but I thought that that was a bad idea.
and the whole patch play, the whole marriage to Sally, that's a whole nother argument for a whole nother video. But yeah, like, you know, Antoine is supposed to be, he is
Yeah,
a coward but he's also a good person. And, and sometimes he can freak out, but when push comes to shove, and he did that a little bit in SatAM too, he would step up.
oh
And it's
yeah,
just
definitely.
like
But
once he stopped simping for Sally, he got a lot better.
yeah, 100%. I was
Except
actually
then
gonna
we got
say
Jeffrey then.
regarding yeah, I was gonna say regarding Archie and the whole thing about like, oh, he's like destined to marry Sally because of like the golden piss puddle or whatever it was. uh
Source of
the
all,
source, whatever
yes.
it's yeah. I call it the golden piss puddle because I
I
hate
mean,
it
you're
so
not
much it
wrong.
doesn't
It's very
deserve the
much.
respect of the name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they should have colored it
I
something
I
else.
noticed
Green
yeah.
even is better.
I Yeah, the golden sludge puddle. But I will say it's so interesting to me because I was watching SatAM. None of that is in it. In fact, Sally being a princess is something that you almost forget about multiple times in the series because of the whole, you know, out in the Great Forest, titles are meaningless. Even when like the king comes in and like, they're talking, he never like is mean or anything. Like he's a really nice guy. He loves his daughter. He respects Sonic and thanks him for everything he does. He genuinely values and respects everyone he talks to. And even like during the war when he's talking to Robotnik, he's always joking around with him and, going, "That's a royal order." Like he's clearly a nice guy, and it's so strange what Archie did because I think I really prefer SatAM's whole handling of things. I think it's better that the king is just a nice guy. I think it's better that Sally's whole princess thing isn't like what defines her, what the king defines her as. In fact, I've always been of the headcanon that if Sonic and Sally were to marry in the SatAM continuity, Sally would become king, but Sonic wouldn't. He'd become her knight, which
That makes
is
sense.
supported by game canon. Because I mean, in real life, people don't know that. Like a lot of people go by fiction logic, like what Archie did. But if you're like a commoner and you marry like a queen, that doesn't make you king. You're a duke at most. So I
A
feel like
consort
Sonic
at
would
best.
even, yeah, like even if like Sonic did marry Sally, like that doesn't necessarily mean he'd have to become king. And I doubt she'd want him to become king. Like she knows Sonic too well that he'd hate that. But it's something that I've always found interesting because it's so interesting because like Max, the character of Max in the comics is so unlikable,
He was
especially
written
compared to the
very
TV.
inconsistently, very inconsistent.
Yeah,
Yeah, like that was the one thing I had brought up in the review is that like the king is very supportive of Sonic, and because again, he's good friends with Uncle Chuck, and this is Uncle Chuck's nephew. So like their families are friends. He knows them. But then you get into Archie, where it's like, who you're interested in this commoner? I'm like, well, first off, said commoner is the fastest thing alive, and if you were any king worth your salt, seeing that kind of power, you'd want to tie it to the royal family ASAP.
yeah. Being honest, like the thing that always makes it weird is the fact that Charles, like Uncle Chuck, he's a knight in SatAM. They
Yeah,
call him Sir Charles. He was knighted. So even though he's not necessarily royalty, I mean, it's pretty close. Like he's the son of a knight of the kingdom, so I don't really see how that would ever be an issue. But regardless, getting back to SatAM, uh, I really do still love the show. I think that like there is a difference between like the first season and second season. The first is more of a consistently good show all throughout, but it comes at the cost of no serialization and no overall vision for the show, really. Aside from
very
Lynn,
episodic.
who was like the story editor. Yeah, exactly. Which is not a bad thing, but season two does have the advantage of having a long running story. In fact, that was mainly due to Ron Myrick, the second season's director, and the writers kind of coming to this whole idea of an ongoing story arc to the show. For reference, the director of season one uh, uh, did not get along with Len Jansen at all. In
Mm.
fact, Ron theorizes that he didn't even like the show or the scripts. So Ron was brought in instead, which is why things are so different in season two. And unlike season one, Ron and Lynn got along very well. And essentially they all worked together and made something really, good and came up with this whole idea of a story arc. In fact, Ron is the one who invented the concept of Uncle Chuck being saved but having to stay in Robotropolis as a mole. And he also created the Doomsday machine as the concept. He's the one who made those two ideas that are such a big part of season two.
That's the main driving forces. So, one thing I wanted to ask you: do you have any favorite episodes? Do you have any least favorite episodes? Kind of.
Gotta be honest, 1 second. I'm trying to remember what episode. Sorry, I'm a little like again. I took a break from the book for a while and have only just came back.
Oh
The
yeah,
episode with
full
Uncle
disclosure
Chuck,
before
like
you
the one
continue,
from
Jake. What is it? Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, for our listeners out there, Jake's been writing a book for a long time, but he's been trying to write a complete SatAM history. Is that right?
yes,
Okay, so just for people out there who may not know, just so people have some context. So please continue.
yeah. I will say season one's episodes are really hard to remember the exact names of because they all are so similar to each other because it always has to have Sonic in the title.
Yeah,
That's
right.
true.
But
It's like Rick and Morty episodes.
Ultrasonic, the episode was Ultrasonic. That's the one with that introduces Uncle Chuck, and I still feel that is by far the best episode of the show and explains why
Really,
it's so good.
really.
It's a good
Yeah,
Okay,
episode.
okay.
And
yeah,
Dinobot, the
I
something. Ah,
yeah, I consider it the best episode personally because all of the freedom fighters, the main ones, are there. They all get a bit of time to shine. It introduces Uncle Chuck, who is
a badass.
probably Uh, yeah, he's a badass, and not only that, but my favorite thing about Uncle Chuck is as you watch him in the episodes, you immediately understand where Sonic got a lot of his traits from, because Uncle Chuck definitely feels just like a more mature Sonic in a lot of ways. He still has that like awesome factor to him, while also being a more mature person. And I still feel the emotional through line of the episode, which is that Uncle Chuck is still roboticized and loses his memory and, overrun with the programming of Robotnik again. I still feel it's really effective. And it really shows why the show is so good and why its basic concept is so good. And thing that I still think is the best part of the show. In fact, it seems that a lot of people agree with me, including Deke themselves, because there is. I'm not kidding when I say this. If you look at the early story Bible and the early story documents for Sonic Underground, uh, they basically. I'm not kidding when I say this. They literally list that episode as a must watch before making Sonic Underground because
Yeah.
it is basically the emotions they want from the series.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the story documents for Sonic Underground, they they essentially say that that's an episode they want all of the writers to watch because it is what they were aiming for with Sonic Underground. Did they succeed? No, but the thought is there. uh, I could go on about Sonic Underground for a long while.
Actually have a
That is a
quick little. I mean, it's not a big digression about or just kind of quick thing because like in the first episode of Sonic Underground, when Robotnik's taking over, we actually see a statue of King Acorn, even though
yeah.
Alina's the queen. Like, did you ever wonder maybe like there is a Kingdom of Acorn on that version of Mobius, and they're just rival kingdoms or just separate kingdoms, or it's just here's the old ruler and
Yeah.
there's a new hedgehog dynasty.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. God bless fans of Sonic Underground. They love the show so much, and I'm so glad they do. And I just it is not for me.
Oh,
And like, yeah, I do think that that is likely. Yes, there is a King Acorn in the Underground universe. Due to that, though, it is possible that was just simply a holdover or taken from
I'm
an
sure it
old
was just
Sonic
used
SatAM
to
model sheet.
Asalith.
Yeah, it was probably just from a Sonic SatAM model sheet, but I mean, it probably does mean there is a Kingdom of Acorn of some kind in the Underground universe. Uh, though I don't know if that was ever intended or whether. Well, I mean, to be fair, the story writers for the show, like Ben, Pat, and Len, they basically were just writing it because they got hired to do it. They
Yeah, I
did
heard
not
they
really
didn't
like the
enjoy
show.
it.
Yeah, I want to correct this because Ben was a story editor. He did not know all of the process of Sonic Underground from creation to airing. And I actually interviewed Robbie London, who was one of the heads of Deke at the time. He wrote the theme songs to both SatAM and Underground, and he kind of said that he respected Ben and he really likes him, but he wasn't always on the mark when it came to the history of Sonic Underground because there were more reasons than just what he mentioned, and there was more to like the process of the musicians and everything. uh, I don't hate Underground. I think a lot of people worked on it who did care about it. I just feel that it definitely suffers from the fact that it just does not have a strong baseline story or concept.
Well, it's one of those interesting things where I always thought, and then had a just before we get back into SatAM, is that it's the only Sonic animated series without Tails, but it was the first one with Knuckles, and they even had
Yeah.
Athar from the Archie comics was in it.
Is it a Thair or Athar?
It might have been a Thair. I always thought it was Athar, but I could
Yeah,
be
me too.
wrong.
Yeah, gotcha.
Does it really
Uh,
matter? Those characters.
yeah, I actually I tried asking Robbie about why, like if I'm not mistaken, like Ben was when it came to pretty much all of the actual story related stuff, he basically said that everything was set in stone before he came on board because they had a whole different set of story editors originally. And then once Ben and Pat were brought along, those previous ones were fired, and Ben and Pat were put in charge, but they couldn't change any of the story. So they didn't really know a lot of why things were the way they were, but they did say that they did work hard to get the Ghouls three-parter done because if I'm not mistaken, they're credited to different writers, but the thing you gotta know is that according to Ben and Pat, even though other writers did make scripts for the show, they basically rewrote all of them themselves
Okay. I mean, because like, what
because
is it? There's like
they
we when we did this show, there was a couple of episodes. One that was written by like the co-host of what podcast was that? Gilbert Godfrey's podcast. It's like he.
Oh
Like,
no, the SatAM is different. SatAM's different. Yes,
oh,
that
okay,
is
we're still talking
correct.
about
I
Underground.
interviewed him
Okay.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say I was going back to SatAM with that. Was a very nice guy to talk to. He was very, very nice. It was interesting actually. Apparently he got the job because Lynn was he had this episode concept of, Sonic's Nightmare in his head, but none of the writers who he pitched it to really seemed to get it, and Frank was the only one who really got the episode and was able to write a good script out of it.
That's his name, Frank Santopadre, right?
Yeah.
I
That's
believe
his
so,
name.
yeah. He was
Okay.
really nice. I hope he's doing okay. I know that he was, the co-host of the Gilbert Godfrey podcast, and I know Gilbert died not too long after. I hope he's doing okay.
Huh. So you mentioned earlier, you
Sorry.
said Robbie as well. That's Robbie London. That's like one of the producers, yeah?
Yes,
You interviewed him?
yes, he was. I did a few times.
Okay. I guess
He was also very nice.
I guess this is kind of a Sonic historian question, but I have to ask it here. How many? Is there anybody you still feel like you'd really want to interview? Because I remember last time we talked, you still haven't interview. You didn't interview Len Jansen. Like you've never been
I
able to
have
get a
not
hold
been
of
able
him.
to interview him. I've been trying. I've not been able to get a hold of him. He's like Lynn has fallen off the face of the earth to knowledge, which, I mean, to be fair, if he's retired, good for him. He had a long legacy of animation. It's just I wish I could interview him, really.
Right, right. Well, I had a couple of questions about Len Jansen actually. Did Len Jansen really like Antoine? Because he wrote all those like Antoine episodes, like the really like awful ones.
I don't know if he liked Antoine. I do know that he specifically liked Sonic as a character, and he
Okay.
specifically did not like Rotor as a character.
He didn't like Rotor.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, in fact, you know why his redesign in season 2 was so ugly? Lynn hated the character and demanded that it get changed.
To be
Oof.
I'm not
to
Big
be
joking.
oof.
uglier? That's the only reason?
I guess. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Like Ben actually, like in an interview a long time ago, was talking about it. Lynn just really didn't like Rotor.
Give him the ugly treatment. Oh goodness.
Yeah,
All right.
We
it's
we,
really
we
funny.
ragged on that redesign, and I'm like, oh dear God, Rudder, what stick did they beat you with?
Oh yeah, he got like the worst treatment in season 2, like with redesign wise. Like they did him dirty.
Wow. Okay. Well, I learned something today. Huh.
So apparently Lynn did really like Sonic, and apparently Lynn, according to Ben, Lynn was actually a lot like Sonic, and that he was a genuinely really cool guy and had this a sort of same attitude. Apparently he was like 50 and he still played basketball with like teenagers and beat them.
So that's
was
why in the pilot, Sonic dropped the Axl Rose reference. Okay, that checks out.
possibly. Yeah,
That
well,
was such a
yeah.
random line for him to say. It's like Axl Rose was the singer, not the guitarist. That was the early '90s. Gotta love it.
So besides Len
Yeah.
Jansen, is there anyone else you're like kind of itching to like trying to track down to interview?
Well, there's Ben's writing partner Pat,
Right.
though that's also turned up a bit cold, but there's a bunch of voice actors who I would love to interview. I'm very curious about the voice acting process because so far I've interviewed one of the voice actors for the show, Mark Bailu, who is so nice, by the way. And I met Bradley Pierce at a con. I've emailed him. I am waiting to see if I get a response for an interview.
Yeah. For
But
our
I definitely
listeners
would
out
really
there,
love to interview one of
Bradley Pierce is the voice of Tails, and who's the first person you mentioned? Was it? Oh, Mark
Mark
Bailu. Yeah, he's the voice actor for
yeah,
Rotor in the first
in
season.
season 1.
Yeah. Okay.
Bradley did Tails.
Right.
Was also the kid in Jumanji.
Yes. So just for our listeners out there who may or may not know. Like, who's this
Ed
Bradley
Chicken
guy?
Davies.
Who? So yeah.
Just John Bradley, kiddo. We're gonna beat him with a stick.
Okay, so mostly the
Yeah.
voice actors. Have you been trying to like? I think we talked on like talk about like was it like Charlie Adler who did Snively and have you met what's his
Yeah.
face? His name's escaping me. Jim Cummings. Because I know he does cons every now and then.
I have not met him. I would love to though, because man, his voice as Robotnik is so good.
Yeah, it's iconic. I mean, he
Of
brings
course,
it
I'd
back every
also
now and then.
Well, he's also
Yeah.
one of the great voice actors of
Yeah, well, if you
the
do
last 23.
Yeah.
Winnie the Pooh, then yeah.
I mean,
Winnie
he's
the
done a lot of.
Pooh, Don Carnage. He's been doing some Star Wars work recently. He was Hondo and some of the Star Wars just a fantastic voice actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I guess one question I had for you, Jake, was in terms of like mysteries on the show that you're still trying to figure out, are there any that you still have that you're like, I don't understand why SatAM does this or why something is the way it is? Or would you say they've mostly all been solved?
Be honest. I'll be honest. One of the things that I would have told you was my most confused thing. Oh, stupid alarm. Kill it. I'm kidding.
No worries.
But if you asked me like a year or two ago, I would have told you it is the history, like whatever the hell happened with the SatAM pilot leading up to its green light as a full series, because until the recent lawsuit document was found that Sega filed against Deke, we did not know what the heck happened, but about why only a pilot was greenlit and then a full series was greenlit, and like what the situation was there. Because for a while, the early history of the show completely was like completely out of my wheelhouse. I did not know what was going on. Even Fiery Furnace didn't know exactly all the details. Who, of course, is the person who he's created the Sonic SatAM production materials archive Dropbox. Yeah. So, but that was solved recently. I will say, in terms of things that I'm curious about, like with the show itself, at least. I guess the two things I would say is most of season one's production, and also I would also very much be curious to know if any more of Ben Hurst's third season documents still exist. Those are two that I've still always wondered about, because in terms of the former, I surprisingly have not been able to get as much info on season one as I would like for the book. I mean, of course, I've gotten information about Lynn. But most of the stuff that I have for season one is in regards to a single artist who did background paintings for the show. And also another thing I interviewed was just, a few, like the writer of Sonic's Nightmare. But season one's overall production is still very much a bit foggy to me. I know a lot about season two's production because Ben Hurst exists and his writings are numerous. And of course, I've interviewed Ron Myrick and a few of the other people who worked on those specific seasons. Um, it's just season one's production is still very much a little foggy to me because I haven't been able to get in contact with as many writers or people as I would like to.
I have a question about season 2 production. We did a big rant on the Doomsday Project and how it very much felt like 2 episodes pressed together. But then when they got to the full,
Oh
what I
yeah.
call the OG, OG fist bump double dash, what Forces did, but Sonic and Sally did it first. It felt like that whole sequence, just the animation budget just dropped. It felt like it was just more,
Oh
we're just gonna put a bunch of still images together and just voice over some gym lines of "I hate that hedgehog," and then poof, everything's gone, as opposed to them actually like running around and taking things out. It felt, and then of course as soon as it's over, animation goes back to normal, the regular production value. So I was wondering, like, was there some budget cuts, or is it just like what happened?
I could ask Ron next because I'm interviewing him again in a week or two.
Okay.
I'll definitely ask him about that. I do know that the script of the Doomsday Project does exist and is public. I could send you it if you want to see if, or I could look at it right now if you want, like
It
to
it
see
doesn't
if.
matter at your leisure. It's one thing I noticed. It's like it very much feels like where Robotnik has Sonic trapped in the roboticizer. That feels like that would be like the end of one episode, and then them finally going for the deep power stone would be the majority of the next episode, leading into the final 10 minute final
It would
you know
not. It would not surprise me at all if it was if Doomsday Project was originally intended to be a two-parter that had to be squished down because again, the Antoine episodes that were mandated by the network. So it would not surprise me personally if, they did plan to have more in there but had to cut it for time. Wait, let me
yeah.
see. I got the Doomsday Project script
Okay.
right now. Sonic
Do you
Wave
have all the
Plan.
scripts?
Not all of them, but a few select scripts from the show have been preserved.
This is just like from people online, or is it mostly from the people you've interviewed that's given them to you, or?
Most of them have been from online. You see, a long time ago, a bunch of scripts for the show were sold on eBay and along with storyboards and stuff like that. And some of those people scanned them and put them up online, or did that years later when they found out that we were making an archive of stuff. Or sometimes what they did was instead of scanning the pages, they converted them to text.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, thank
The
thank
Doomsday
you,
Project one
person
was
who converted them to text or scanned them. Thanks for privateering and doing your part.
To be sure as no hell no, Sega wouldn't do it.
Yeah, right. Thank you, passionate fans.
yeah.
There's a couple of other questions, I guess, while you're digging up those, and I guess saying them to
I
Malzilla.
found it.
You found
I
it.
found it.
Okay.
I did find it. Yeah, it seems that the Robotnik lines were definitely added in post.
Okay.
And I'm guessing I 100% believe they probably had to do some budget cutting stuff. It was very much like you got to remember that again, they were still doing stuff on a like even though they had, like they had decent animation, it's just that the budget obviously wasn't always there for like Ben Hurst and Pat, they had huge plans and ideas for the show. They wanted to make it like theatrical quality. But you can tell that they had to, you know, at points, condense stuff to make it fit on a TV budget. It's just how it works with some shows. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, one show that like a good example of that is the show Final Space. If I'm not mistaken, one of the characters was killed off in one of in the last season, not because they wanted to do that story wise, it was because they were too expensive to animate. I don't know if that's 100% true, but that would not surprise me. Sometimes compromises like that are made with animation and stuff like this.
Huh. So the characters only really die if the production just doesn't allow it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's sometimes how it be.
Crazy. I guess in terms of talking about characters that have always been killed or taken away. I know we've talked a little bit about Sally Acorn a little bit in the past. But you were saying like it's been kind of a mystery about who really created the character. But if I remember correctly, you were saying on Twitter that you kind of like boiled it down to like two people that may have created the character who gender swapped Ricky.
Yeah. It was either Dean Sitton or it was name escapes me. If name escapes me, but Dean was definitely someone who may have done it. The thing that's a little if I'm not mistaken, there may actually exist documented proof of who made the name. Because a bunch of early Sega of America Sonic documents were donated to a video game museum. The only problem is it would cost me a few $100s to get a license to first of all get access to them and then get a license to them.
Oh.
Oof.
So I'm definitely gonna have to figure out how to do that. But I do want to figure it out because I asked Dean if he was the one who named her because he's the one who created the Robotnik name. Uh, but he said that he doesn't want to say definitively yes or no because he doesn't have documentation to say one way or the other. It's one of those things where he doesn't want to say it and then turn out to be wrong, which I think is definitely the right thing to say. Because I was trying to ask him and was curious about it, but he basically told me he wasn't exactly sure. And that's kind of the thing that happens with a lot of, when you're going into stuff nearly 30 years after it was made or, things were decided on because, details get mixed up. It's one of the things that a lot of people nowadays try to discredit a lot of Sega of America staff's recounting of events because, things aren't exactly 100% how the Japanese staff say it or how, documented stuff says it. But really, I think a lot of that just boils down to the memory not always being accurate to stuff that happened 30 plus years ago.
Yeah, we just don't have the
So,
record keeping that we do now, and the accessibility of it.
yeah, exactly.
Crazy. Oh wait, so tell me again, who is this person that you mentioned just prior? Dean something you said?
Dean Sitton.
And what
Dean
is
Sitton.
what is his relationship to Sega?
Uh, well, just saying exactly what the wiki says. He's a developer known for his involvement in the conceptual and localization phases of the original Sonic the Hedgehog. He was responsible for conceptualizing the name Dr. Ivo Robotnik, as well as multiple badniks from the US version. And he was responsible for naming two other games for the Sega Genesis, which was Decap Attack and Quackshot. And,
So he just worked
well,
at
just in
Sega of
general.
America. Okay.
Yeah, basically. He's actually credited in the promotional comic as one of Sonic's friends.
Okay.
I
The,
mean,
the comic
aren't we
that was
all
published.
just Sonic's friends in the
There you go.
grand scheme of the universe?
There you go. This isn't really like
Oh.
localization. This is just basically somebody says, "Hey, we got this Sonic project. You want to help us work on it?" And then he just said, "How about we
Yeah,
name it
basically, it
this?"
was.
Yeah, because one
Yeah,
interesting.
basically, like localization. Oh,
Okay.
you go. What were you
Yeah,
saying?
yeah. Because one interesting thing is because I've interviewed somebody from Russia before, and they said once that they had to change the name Robotnik because it just means the worker in in Russian. I forgot they changed it to like something that sounds
Worker.
very similar to Robotnik. But I'm like wondering like did they speak Russian or something? Why did they choose that name? Or he's a I'm gonna give him a nickname. He's a robot. He has a nickname, Robotnik. All right, there we go. Done. I'm trying to figure out how they came up with
Yeah.
that name. Do you know anything about that or no idea?
I have to ask. I mean, I'd have to ask Dean again.
Okay.
But Robotnik just sounds like a good name. Like
Oh
being
yeah, yeah,
honest,
yeah.
it does fit him.
I mean, and it's one thing that I've kind of talked a lot about in recent episodes is that I see a lot of people in the Sonic community really loving to just discredit all of Sega of America's stuff that they did in the early '90s, just because it didn't quite go
Yeah,
with what the Sega of Japan was doing. But on one hand, what Sega of America did worked. We probably wouldn't have
yeah,
the franchise as it is right now. But even close to that, I mean, again, he is Dr. Robotnik. I mean, it's, it works.
I mean,
It's like,
the
it's
movie's
a
called
movie.
Dr.
Everyone,
Robotnik.
the movie knows him now.
Yeah. In fact, I don't know if I said this, but Dean actually told me a really like cute story that essentially what happened was is he one day he got home he was meeting up with I think either his father or grandfather, and he went to Dean very excitedly going, "I heard Jim Carrey's going to be playing a character that you named." And he was like really excited about that, which is which I mean would be cool. I mean, imagine finding out Jim Carrey is playing a character you named.
Oh yeah, it's a flex. It's a flex.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure the Robotnik name, alongside the Chili Dogs, are, I think, really the main thing that carried over from the US's localization of Sonic. Because a lot of the other stuff has, of course, been, kind of left behind along the years when they reverted to the Japanese canon. But stuff like the Robotnik name and Chili Dogs were retained. But to be fair, Chili Dogs originated in SatAM's
Adventure
development.
stuff. Okay.
No,
Hmm.
it originated in the development of SatAM. SatAM started development first.
Okay. Okay. That's what I was thinking. But
Yeah, and though to be fair, the first appearance of the Chili Dog in Sonic was the Archie comics.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
because they were printed before, they came out in '92,
Archie
right?
and SatAM. Yeah, 1992, November of that year.
Okay. One thing I wanted to pivot a little bit here. I wanted to go back a little bit, and because you said that you interviewed Frank Santopadre. Now, what is it? Malzilla and we talked a
Yep.
little bit about that episode, and we were kind of like critiquing and going through these episodes. Um, that's the one episode that we felt kind of came up a little flat in terms of like writing wise, because we've kind of felt that like Sally kind of has a moment where she doesn't actually get roboticized towards the end. Was was there ever like sort of like vision behind that episode? Did you talk to him about that at all, or not really?
Let me pull up my interview with them real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was one of those things where it's like, the Sonic's nightmare was
Got
that,
it.
his big fear of Sally getting roboticized, but that scenario never comes up. She gets captured by Robotnik in that kind of chemical plant, ocean, oil ocean type locale, but Robotnik has no he's just like, I'm just gonna like leave y'all tied up, and then I'm just gonna like blow this place up, and then you all die. Like, he's got no thoughts of roboticizing her at all, and it was just kind of felt like, well, this feels thematically dissident from one another. It's like we're setting up this scenario of Sonic, this fear he needs to overcome, but nothing comes out of it
Right.
other than
Yeah, I'm looking up my interview with him now. Uh, just to kind of give some basic background. He had Frank got the job because he had a fan admirer through the cartoonist and comedy writer Jack Mendelson, and he basically got him the job of he basically recommended to him to various producers and showrunners, which led him to meeting Len. And essentially what happened was is sorry. Essentially Len basically pitched him the storyline, gave him and Frank gave his take on it. He was a huge fan of horror movies, so he essentially wrote a draft and turned it around pretty quickly, and that's what the episode became. And he said that again. A lot of it was Lynn, like the outline was Lynn, but he fleshed out a lot of the plot points and added the dialogue. But if I'm not mistaken, he never really explained to me why, of course, Sally doesn't nearly get robustized at the end. I think that's a good point about that episode. That is a little strange, now that I think about it.
Yeah, because we were
But I think the
talking.
whole thing.
Yeah, go on.
I mean, it's a good
Oh, sorry,
episode.
Yeah, mine. Yeah, yeah. I mean, like
I was just saying.
it hits the pathos. It hits the right marks. It has a really good opening. Um, we love that quote.
Where were
Where were
you
you
when
when the
things were handed
brains were
out?
handed out? Yeah. Like,
Iconic.
what the hell is that
Uh,
line? It's like something out of like a Shakespeare play. You know what I mean?
I mean, to be fair, in the end, it is basically a similar thing where where Sally isn't getting roboticized, but he nearly loses not only her but all of his friends too. So it is a similar,
That's fair.
situation in a way. It's in fact, if anything, it's worse because at least roboticized isn't confirmed to be permanent, whereas with death is don't really come back from that.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean,
uh,
Sonic's found ways to cheat death. They just
oh yeah,
require the
but
kiss of a princess and a 7 Chaos Emeralds. They got the
and you
princess.
get
They just need the emeralds.
but would it work with a non-human princess? That's the question.
That is a good point. But we can only
Society,
hope.
That's a
society, if the human Sally concept art was final.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, because what is it? Was it Malzil and I were talking about that episode, or I'm not sure if it was him or it was me, but we were talking about how like for example, the Sonic and Sally episode, right? You have the whole episode where you have an imposter playing Sally, right? And I kind of felt like maybe some of that should have been tied in to like the same plot, kind of. I guess because they follow the same kind of what's the word? Thematic choice, I guess. So I felt like
I
they
get
could.
what you mean.
I felt like maybe they could have had like if they were to rewrite SatAM, like if I were to do this. Actually, now I remember exactly what I wanted to say on this wrap up. Yeah.
The thing, the thing is, Radrey, is that I get what you mean. I think it would have tied in better if they tied the episodes together and kind of had them thematically line up and reference each other. But again, you got to remember that SatAM season 1 was like it was basically like 12 standalone episodes.
Right.
They hadn't really come up with the idea of making like everything super connected,
Oh,
which they
I,
would do in season 2,
I have a
but in
question.
season 1,
Another. It was
oh, well,
something that I noticed.
finish?
Oh, sorry.
All right, I just wanted to finish. Thing is, Red Ray, I agree with you. If I was to go back and rewrite SatAM, I would have made season 1 like much more connected in terms of story elements and stuff, and have it lead more naturally into season 2. But it's just that at the time, they didn't know whether it was going to be a fully connected series with strong continuity or not. It wasn't until season 2 that they basically did a sort of soft reboot and made it an actual ongoing story regarding the freedom fighters, multiple different ones, the multiple different groups, the list, the king, and Doomsday, that they fully committed to the idea of a serialized story where everything tied into each other.
Right. Right. Uh, Melzo, you had something to sound off on?
Well, yeah, it was kind of one of those things, and maybe it's in the episode notes of the Doomsday Project. Is that like they come up with those little water balloons that like eat through metal? Was that supposed to be a reference to
That's a
the
good
final episode
question.
with the pteropods in season 1, where they find the plants that eat the metal, and Sally says, "Oh, I'm going to bring the seeds home and we'll plant them," and it's like, okay. Was that supposed to be a
I mean,
callback? 'Cause I thought it was. At least it would
I don't
made
know if
sense
it
to
was
me.
meant to be a callback. It would be cool if it was. Like, I will admit, season 2 does have the thing of being a little disconnected compared to season 1, with them not mentioning characters like Griff or like mostly the most that was referenced from season 1 and season 2 was, well, Uncle Chuck. But I think, I mean, if it was intended, that would be cool. Even if it wasn't, I mean, you could pretend it was intended. I mean,
That's
the
what I'm
show is over
pretending.
now, so
It's my headcanon.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's been several things in the show. Like there's been other things like you just mentioned right now, Griff and Cat never comes back. I mean, he doesn't even come back in the Archie book. Um, what are
I
those
will say if
characters
you want to
underground?
see those characters,
What?
I will say no. I will say if you do want to see like stuff like that followed up on, the season 3 webcomic does a pretty good
Oh
job of
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. I'm talking more about like official work. like the Archie book in particular,
Yeah,
because that was the only place where we actually got to see kind of a conclusion to SatAM. So
yeah. Oh, it's a completely different universe, but I will say, if I'm not mistaken, the reason why Ari, again, this is secondhand knowledge that I don't even know where it came from. It's just someone told me. So if this is wrong, 100% call me out on this in like the comments or whatever. But if I'm not mistaken, I think Ken said at one point that he didn't really care for Ari as a character, and also Jeffrey already existed, so he didn't really want to use him.
And not caring for characters that he didn't create. Wow, that's surprising.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but if I believe Ari does make an appearance, though. He does make an appearance in that really bad adaptation of Cry of the Wolf.
Speaking of Cry of the Wolf, because I've been sitting on that one for a while, because oddly enough, Lupe was a character who, pretty much 11th hour in season two, but they would get a crap ton of development through Archie, both in the early days and then a little bit into the, probably was going to get more in the post boot, but it ended. Do you have any thoughts
Yeah.
and musings about Lupe? Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, they were supposed to get a lot more development and screen time if there was a season two. They were actually modeled after Native American tribes because Pat, sorry, Pat, Ben's writing partner, was an expert on various Native American tribes, and
Okay.
later on, actually, they would contribute to various Native American museums,
Okay.
and they even rewrote one of a classic Native American play later
Oh, that's
A
on.
cool.
classic Native American play. Do you know which one it is?
The I have it written somewhere. I just can't remember the exact name at this moment. One second, let me check.
Okay. Yeah, we're hitting you with the really hard questions. I mean, some of this is real, like, I don't know. In Japanese, you have a word for this. It's called like overly detailed. Um, it's called komakai in Japanese, but like when
Yeah.
you overly look over like these small details that. Not it doesn't have like necessarily a negative meaning in the language, but if you call like your boss or your somebody who's higher than you, like your senpai, komakai, that it's like really rude. But this being said, if you use it, I guess it like what is it with the Japanese word? I'm not trying to say I'm trying to offend you. I'm just saying that in terms of like
Unto
saying it
these hills.
innocuously, it's fine. But yeah, we do get komakai in the show a lot.
It's Unto These Hills.
Actually, so.
Oh, that's the name of the play. Do you know who wrote it? Anybody famous or not really?
Let me check. It was originally written by Kermit Hunter. Uh, it was it was then rewritten by Hene Giojima, then Patalee and Ben Hurst, and also Linda Hurst, and I think it got rewritten once more after the fact.
Huh. That's interesting. All right. I did not know that. Wonder which
Yeah,
one.
like I knew they had based a lot of the wolf pack off Native Americans. That was pretty easy to pick up, and I had learned that. But it was one of those interesting things we talked about in the episode was that in the Archie book, they also took a strong Spanish Mexican flair with them too, Central American, because that's kind of where the characters ended up before the reboot. So that was kind of interesting. Like, okay, what's Ken doing now with this?
Yeah, I don't know why. Do you know any? I mean, you interviewed Ken as well. Did you ever actually ask about the wolf pack or? Well, there was a lot of people ask him questions. I don't know if he still takes
I
them.
haven't I haven't I don't believe I did. I don't remember,
Okay.
like Ken's interview was like 2 years ago. It was a while.
Right. Right. I mean, yeah. I don't see too many like wolf pack stands out there, so I imagine probably this info is not so highly regarded. But it is interesting
Yeah.
because it did make up the makeup of what Sonic Archie was. So, just to like pivot a little bit here again, because this is the pivot show. Welcome, everyone.
We digress and we pivot. That's
Yeah,
what we do.
yeah. Sonic pivots coast to coast. Sonic, I don't know. How do we rename this show? Anyway, yeah. Going back a little bit to Sally a little bit here. So you're saying pretty much that I can say that it's still a mystery. Is that fair to say?
Regarding who,
Who is the
I'm sorry.
creator? And because I know like on wikis everywhere it said like Ken Kinoshita is the one who redesigned her to like the design that we have today, or the one that everyone knows, I guess you could say.
Well, there is a couple different designers on SatAM. I'd have to again look up a list of them, but there was multiple people. Ken Kinoshita, I believe, did do redesigns for season one, which is kind of the more well-known ones, and then they were further redesigned in season two, of course, and the pilot had different designers altogether. In fact, there was a huge list of designers for the pilot because an entire company was brought on board to do it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, actually, there's one thing I wanted to ask you that came up while I was doing research for this show. So the person I interviewed for Sonic Historian, the episode that I'm still trying to scrape together and put up on Sonic Historian, mind you, it's coming. It's coming. Like your episode. Michaeline, Christine Risley. The name's escaping me now. MCR. Help me out here, Jake. Michaeline. Christine Risley?
Oh yeah,
Risley?
Michaeline Risley.
Yeah.
Michaeline Risley.
My memory was telling me that her name was credited on SatAM, but when I went back to like the credits, it's nowhere to be found. She only has like some credits on like what was it, Adventures of.
I believe she was kind of the mediator between Sega and Geek.
Okay.
There was someone else initially who was in the early development, but
she just wasn't credited on the show.
Yes, no.
Okay, yeah, because we had a long.
Found out that.
Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna say I found out that there are actually multiple people who weren't credited who worked on SatAM because I found out that the main composer for season 2 is not credited.
Oh, who is that?
It was. Just give me a moment to look for it.
I mean, probably because, like, obviously, if you're having trouble finding it, we can't also just really just type it in the wiki. You could tell that like a lot of this information just wasn't important at the time, and nobody really felt like writing it down.
Randall Chrisman.
Randall
Randall Chrisman.
Okay, all right. Oh, him.
Yeah, he
no, I don't
did.
know who that is. I really don't know. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, he according to Ron, he did a lot of the music for season 2, but he's not credited in the show's credits, which is very strange.
Huh. All right. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, because there seems like there's a lot of information out there. Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. Michaeline, right? Because we interviewed her, or back in Sonic Story, and we interviewed her and we asked her a lot of questions about Sally, and she had a lot to say about her, like a lot to say. You know, because I imagine like probably some of the people you probably have interviewed, they're like, oh yeah, that show, I worked on it for 1 year. Why is that so important to you? I'm sure you get a lot of that. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Ron actually, believe it or not, he had a lot of fond memories of the show. In fact, a lot of people I've interviewed had a lot of fond memories working on the show.
Okay.
But some of them are less enthused than others. Robbie London actually said that it wasn't a show that was as near and dear to him as some of the other ones.
Okay.
In fact, he was more close with Underground due to the fact that he wrote the theme song for it and helped a lot of the development of it. I mean, he wrote the theme song for SatAM too, but he didn't get credited for that like he did with Underground.
It's about the theme song is about the one thing even today Sonic fans love about, the only thing they really like about Underground. So there's that. Though Fastest Thing Alive is an absolute banger, and I was so happy when Team Season 3 got old Tommy to do a little brief cover for it, because quite frankly, Sega should use that song a long time ago.
Yeah, it's a good song. I'm still waiting for Sonic to fight the Naked Eye enemy. I'm telling you, they got to get Ian Flynn to create a character named the Naked Eye.
But he's too fast for the naked eye.
I know, but um, let's say Sonic defeats the Naked Guy in like the beginning of the episode, and then like the naked, like I don't know, like I'm just picturing like what is it, like Sonic 2, that sort of thing, kind of 2D animation where we see like the Naked Eye get destroyed, and then at the end it's reborn, and then it comes back to like the visible eye, or I don't know. Yes, this is like pure cheese, pure corn. Yeah. I really want to see that. So anyone, if you're listening, we need somebody to make this. Anyway, I digress. No. One thing I want to talk about with Michaeline, I haven't gotten around to emailing her because I was going to message her again. There was like some SatAM document that was released on Twitter, I think, that confirmed something. What was that? And I wanted to see if you could actually
Was
say...
it regarding the Deke lawsuit, or was it more of like the ownership of the characters?
The ownership of the characters. There was a document that someone released online of like paperwork that pretty much said, and it had Michaeline's name on it, and it said something about how Sega actually owns the Freedom Fighters. So like it was legit.
Was that the lawsuit document? Yeah, that was.
It was
that
a
came out
lawsuit
recently.
document? All right.
Yeah, because Deke was selling Sonic cells without Sega's permission.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you confirmed that, I think, on Twitter.
Yeah.
Or I think it was in the lawsuit? Okay, that was the lawsuit thing. Okay.
Yeah. Ben originally thought that wasn't the case, but it was likely simply due to the fact that But it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was likely due... Man, I cannot speak for some reason today. Ben initially denied that happened because he said that it was all legit and he got his own cell of it. But it turned out that likely he was misinformed or didn't know all the details because that lawsuit document pretty much says that yes, Deke did it without Sega's permission.
So I guess that's one way to say that yes, the Freedom Fighters are 100% owned by Sega, but for some reason they just don't seem to want to do anything with them.
Which makes us sad.
Yeah, they just threw him in the vault for some reason.
Honestly,
we got to get David Zaslav out of Sega, man. I'm telling you.
I'm not too upset about it. Personally, I have always stated that I would personally like to see if they were going to make stuff with the Freedom Fighters, I would like to see it set in its own universe, like either a SatAM style or maybe like an original universe with those characters. It would be cool to see them come back, though I'm pretty happy with how the fans have been using them and treating them as of late. I think it's really cool.
Okay. That's fair. Let's see. What else we got here? I had a lot. Oh, I remember now. Yeah, there was a big sort of rant I wanted to go on about some people when I was kind of saving this towards the end of like the very first review we did of the show. And a lot of people complain that, Sonic SatAM is not really, canon. Well, because number one, it isn't canon. It's not really like it doesn't. What was the phrase I used, Malzil? I can't even remember. It was so long ago.
I don't remember that. I just say it's canon to the greater Sonic multiverse.
Right. Well, I guess some people say that it's not Sonic. Like this is not Sonic the Hedgehog, or it doesn't follow the games, or it doesn't. It's not.
It's its congruent. Own Sonic. It's its own Sonic the Hedgehog. You see, I view it as sort of like this. Like how Spider-Man has countless different versions with different ideas. Same with Batman. It's same for Sonic. It doesn't, even though it's different from the games and SatAM Sonic's personality is different from his game counterpart. That doesn't mean he isn't Sonic. It just means he's a different take on Sonic. It's in the same way that Adam West's Batman is still Batman, even though it's different from, say, the recent Robert Pattinson Batman. They're still both Batman. They're just different takes on it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
That's why I said, it's canon to the greater Sonic multiverse, There's different continuities. I mean, that was just, it's been so weird seeing, especially modern day Sonic fans, and especially because the whole idea of multiverses, which was, once kind of a thing that only, geeky nerds knew about, it's become part of the gross pop culture lexicon. So, yeah, it's kind of like, why are we making such a big deal about, there it's part of the franchise, so it's not Game Sonic big, you know,
Well, I mean, that's the
it still
thing.
means a lot to people. That's always kind of one thing. It's kind of what Nick was saying. It's like, this means stuff to people. Don't be a dick, and yeah.
Because the thing I was trying to bring up is the thing with what is it? Something that's adaptability. Like when you have something that's like faithful to like what is considered canon, or something that's like considered the basic scriptures, of what Sonic the Hedgehog is, right? I sort of feel like, because like you see a movie like I don't know, well, let's say Harry Potter, right? You have something like Harry Potter where it's adapted from the books because the books were the original, right? But like if you look into like the adaptation community, like people who talk about media that's adapted to other mediums, it's very contentious. And because there is no way to 100% adapt something into something else. There's always going to be some infidelity, something that's
Oh,
not
we use that
faithful.
term a lot,
Yeah.
especially in season 1, infidelity.
And yeah, the point I was trying to make in that first episode when we were talking about SatAM and a bit being in having sort of this infidelity is, not everything needs to follow a set structure or a set canon, because sometimes, like when you have, a piece of art, you have to have it to like be where it fits the medium or where it fits the time, right? Because like there's certain the one of the problems like I think a lot of people kind of overlook is like, because I mentioned about how when you used to watch these shows, the way people used to consume them is that there was no DVDs, there were no YouTube, there was none of this stuff. And so you kind of just had to like, you're clicking through the channels to find it. And you had to sort of present all of the material to some like a viewer like that. So like a show being like episodic or being faithful to like something probably doesn't always fit like, like a video game or fit,
Exactly.
what is a stage play or any of these sort of things. And I think a lot of people kind of forget that, and they kind of like in their head they have this idea of the way history was, written or how it was remembered, and I guess the way I could say it is like, what is it? Bill Pullman in Lost Highway. They remember it the way they want to remember it. And so, and so I don't know. This being said, even myself, I don't even hold myself in this own regard, that sometimes you have to even like admit that you're wrong about something based upon like the information that's out there. Because I mean, like I guess another example here, I'm citing a lot of examples, like the movie Memento, right? If anybody's seen that one, it's a movie that all goes in reverse. One of Christopher Nolan's like first films, great film, but spoilers for a I don't know 24-year-old movie, I think. The thing about that movie is that the main character, he has this memory problem where he can't remember anything. And the whole thing is about him trying to search for the person who killed his wife. But the thing was, at the end of the film, you find out that he actually found the guy who killed or they found the guy who attacked his wife. His wife didn't actually die. But the main character doesn't actually like the way those events play out. He doesn't like the way, that he he was the one that killed his wife with overdosing her on insulin. He wasn't the one who. He was the one. He actually found the attackers and he killed the attackers. And the whole film is just about people using him, and he doesn't like that. So he basically just kind of rechanges the narrative so that it benefits him. So it kind of makes him seem like this unsung hero. So if there's any sort of like soapbox moment that I have towards the end of this show, it's that. Don't become be careful who you pretend to be, you know? And so this even goes for myself. Sometimes you may think or you may believe in a certain idea or you have a certain philosophy to something, but even if you have that philosophy in mind, it doesn't always mean it's correct. And rant.
Gotcha.
I know it's a really long way to explain it, but that's my pretty much have to say, like, people who say that they dislike SatAM, and again, as people who just dislike SatAM in general, I get it. You know, some people, there is no acquiring for taste, as they say. Or how's the phrase go? Help me out, Melza. There's something.
No accounting for taste.
There's no accounting for
like
taste. Thank you. There's no acquiring. There's no accounting for taste. So, and you know, even when I was talking on the previous episode, to plug our other episode, Malzil and I, we just did an episode with Chevelle where we talked about the DC Sonic crossover, where pretty much, you know, I forgot what I was going to say about this. No, pretty much that, you know, with maybe I'm going to remember it in a minute. My mind got like discombobbled here for a minute. Hold on. Let me backtrack a bit. I got caught up in the no accounting for taste. Can't remember what I was going to say.
Was it like regard to the crossover and it's not for everyone, or
maybe? I don't know. I'll probably re-listen to this episode and like that's what I wanted to say. Oh well. Is this a sign of old age?
It was fine.
Yeah.
Just kind of going into that, just if I can, you know.
Yeah, please do.
Side tangent is that, like, I get for like a lot of younger fans, because like I think a lot of fans, when they look at SatAM, Archie, Adventures of, it's just they're fans who, you know, like I'm assuming all of us grew up with SatAM, which I know. Yeah.
Now I remember what it is.
Like,
yeah, go on.
Okay, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, once upon a time in the Sonic franchise, there wasn't a whole lot to it, and that's when this came out. And I think a lot of people forget about it because they're so used to seeing Shadow, Cream, Blaze, Silver, and they feel like, oh, these have been part of the franchise for so long. And in many ways, yes. I mean, again, think about it, you know, next year is the 20th anniversary of Sonic 06. So, you know, that's 20 years, and there's a lot of fans who've been born in that 20 years of Sonic, and it's realized that, like, oh, this show that came out within, like, the first 2 years of the franchise, where so many of these characters that are now mainstays didn't exist. I mean, and look at Amy. Amy popped up roughly the same time Sally did. You know, you can make the argument, you know, give or take, you know, official to non-official appearances. You know, they both kind of popped up between 92 and 93 in official and unofficial, you know, not capabilities, capacities. But, you know, it's like Amy, you know, Sally was, for all intents and purposes, the queen of the franchise till about 97, you know, 98, 99, when, you know, Adventure came in and, you know, Amy kind of took her spot back, according to some folks. But, so yeah, you know, it's one of those things where, like, I always tell people if they try to get into SatAM or Archie, just, you know, keep them open mind that a lot of this stuff, when it was written, what we have now did not exist for like 10 years. And some people can accept that, some people can't. So, yeah, I just kind of got to roll with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that
I mean,
that
to be fair,
go
some
on.
of the Japanese lore did exist at the time, but a lot of it wasn't developed yet. I mean, Sally and the Freedom Fighters technically Sally and the Freedom Team, as they were called, were first conceptualized in late 1991, early 1992, but they still took time to develop. Amy existed, of course, and she was in the manga, of course, but a lot of times the past didn't cross over. Like, yes, Sega of Japan did send occasionally stuff like artwork and similar materials to DeK and Sega of America, but a lot of times Sega of America was sending their own stuff. Basically, it was a mess. Like, a lot of people don't understand how certain materials were sent and how some stuff was done.
The
It's a
internet that
whole
we have today did not exist back then.
Oh
yeah,
no.
yeah.
And even as someone in their mid 30s now, it's hard to remember, like, oh yeah, once upon a time we had to dial up to have to use the internet, that you couldn't use your phones when you were using the internet. And you look at now, I mean, I'm in Washington, Seattle, Radrey's in Japan, you're in Missouri, and we're in three parts of the whole different world, and we're having we've been having a super conversation about things.
Yeah, so Mike, just to interject here a bit, it is cool. I am listening, mind you. That whole thing where I crashed and burned there a second ago. No, the thing I was trying to say, that was plugging the DC Chevelle episode we did yesterday. I pretty much wanted to say that I said this, is that you should always give something another chance. Like, I didn't really like the DC crossover too much. I gave it a pretty low score for my review.
It's a fine.
Yeah, it's a fine. I mean, that's not a really good review, I'd say. But that being said, with people who really disliked SatAM, or they seem to need to go out of their way to tell people that something's boring or something that doesn't fit in the Sonic, I'm telling you to give something another chance, And I'm going to give you a real world example. When I was younger, I really, really did not like mushrooms. And I figured out the reason why I didn't like mushrooms is because the person who served me the mushrooms didn't cook them very well. And, as somebody now who eats mushrooms all the time, who looks for mushrooms, who actively like puts mushrooms in, like, I don't know, my salad or
Trip on mushrooms.
What?
I'm making a psychedelics drug joke.
Okay, all right. Yeah,
You're
magic
tripping
mushrooms.
on mushrooms.
Sure. What I'm saying is now I thoroughly enjoy eating mushrooms. I'm not saying that. Yeah, sure. Sometimes when you watch something over and over and over again and you still just don't like it, hey, maybe it just wasn't for you. It's just not your style. It's not your thing, right? Some people don't like drinking beer. They think it tastes awful, right? Some people don't like natto, Japanese, like, fermented soybeans. I quite like natto.
I despise it.
Yeah, some people really hate it because it's sticky. It smells bad. It smells like an old shoe. You have mustard in it, you have soy sauce, and you mix it together, and it's... I get why people would probably find it unpleasant to eat. Another example here, I'm going to give you another real-world example. So, for example, Michelin, right? Michelin, the guidebook, when they made, like, the Michelin star rating, like, whenever, like, something's a good restaurant or not, a lot of that is based upon Western style. This is kind of interesting for me coming from the East, and, championing, Sonic the Hedgehog, the SatAM show. But, yes?
I just gotta throw, this is just a minor side that people don't really realize. Like, the whole Michelin star, like, rating for restaurants originates from the Michelin Tire Company.
Yes.
Because they made all these it's a fun little trivia fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry.
The reason why I bring up Michelin, and I'm talking about this is related. Stick with me. Is that a lot of the Michelin star reviews that, like, get 5 stars or these, like, excellent stars, like, anybody who knows about Michelin will know that If you get a star, that's like high praise. It's high prestige. But the problem with that Michelin star rating is a lot of it's kind of catered to like Western tastes. It's not really catered to like Chinese tastes. Like if you ever come to China, because I've been there several times, you'll find that a lot of the food is very wet. It's very, very wet. And it's really kind of something like you just kind of grow up with. You don't really just, start eating. I mean, sure, there's like, if you ever go to like a Chinese restaurant in the US, yeah, but you also have to remember that's a very American style Chinese food. Like, my girlfriend, who soon to become my wife, is pretty much, she was not used to American style Chinese food, right? Because like the type of Chinese food, they like, like century eggs, mabo tofu, something that you really don't eat in the West. So what I'm trying to say, this really, really long-winded way of saying this is always give something a second chance. Think that there's other opinions out there. Listen to those opinions, be patient, and if, you can appreciate an older show like this, a 30-year-old show, and you can understand at the time about why it was important, you'll get a lot more out of it. And that is my piece.
Gotcha.
And now my watch has ended. I don't know.
For the watch.
Yes,
Stat.
for the watch.
With the watch.
Yeah, actually, kind of thinking about that, Jake. Now speaking about that, you did not grow up with SatAM, but yet you've attached yourself a lot with SatAM over all these years.
Yep.
You've never given it up. Like you're
This is
still
why
really
never
very,
assume.
very
Now
interested.
I feel like an ass.
What?
assume
Now
we
you
all
feel like an
grew up.
ass? Sorry, I talked over you.
No, now I feel fast because I said I assumed we all grew up with it, so I didn't. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I started watching it around like 12 or 14, so not really. So I did in a way. I just found it on YouTube rather than on, say, TV, because it wasn't really airing on TV when I was, when I first discovered it in 2014. I found it on YouTube and I really liked it. I actually got into it through a video describing like behind the scene, like, fun facts about, cartoons, and it's like Jaleel White was Sonic, and I'm like, okay, I'll watch that. And I watched the series and I really liked it.
Oh, okay, so you kind of had like a little journey that brought you there.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the video was, or like what other cartoons that inspired you to
I think it was
dive into it?
a guy named Lou Tunes. I don't know if he's still around. He did videos. I think they were very like safe videos. Like they weren't like super like I don't think they were like super great or anything. I just remember he had one video where he's talking about Sonic and the old cartoons and how Jaleel White played him in one. I'm like, oh yeah, that guy Urkel. Okay. And then I just decided to give it a watch. I initially fell off it because I didn't really like Heads or Tails because I mean the pilot just isn't as good as the actual
It's a
series.
pilot.
Yeah, but once I actually went back and watched the rest of the episodes, I really, really enjoyed it. And I've been a fan of SatAM since.
Yeah, because it's really surprising to me because I know as like a kid when I was younger, I remember when I saw my dad watch Shinichi ni no Samurai, which is like Seven Samurai in Japanese, and I remember him watching this on VHS, and it was in black and white, and it had subtitles. And I remember as a kid just thinking, who would watch this? This thing is old. You know, like who would have the patience to like sit down and watch 4 hours of this? This looks like garbage, right? And of course, yeah, here I am in Japan, and Seven Samurai is one of the reasons. I mean, this is my weeb fixation for the day that brought me to Japan, that got me interested in Japanese movies. But yeah, so I mean, it goes back to what I was saying. Have a greater appreciation for something that may look shitty, on the surface, but deeper inside is something very special.
Gotcha.
And I think that's the best way for me to wrap up SatAM. I'm really kind of sad to see it go. I really am. I really enjoyed getting really pedantic about all these tiny details because there was like so many parts of the show that were really cool. Like the backgrounds are really cool. I mean, I mean, I was
The
even
voice acting cast
the
is
voice acting cast is A plus. You know, Charlie Adler, Jim Cummings. I mean, like they're like pinnacles of
It's an all-star class.
Yeah, like what your childhood is. You know, it's what you remember growing up. That because I mean, I've even said this in prior episodes. Like media itself is really something that kind of like it. Whether it doesn't really like force you to do something. Like if you play a violent video game, you're not a violent person, right? But the opposite side of that is, it does really influence your worldview, right? So, for example, Antoine that's the way we felt French people were like. We all thought they were bumbling. We all thought they were fuels, as he says. Yeah. We all sort of thought that.
I mean, I never thought that, but I understand. I understand that.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, it's been, how do I say, retconned? I don't know. It's been improved. Over the years. We no longer think of French people as wearing berets and striped shirts and drinking wine and eating baguettes and being mimes.
I like how you say retcon as if it's like a retcon to real life. Like,
yeah, right?
Yeah.
We've done patch notes.
Some patch notes of, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the funny thing about this, the SatAM show for myself is like a very personal journey. And I mean, I've said this on. I mean, I was even talking about in our interview with the gaming apologist for SatAM. Is Sonic and Sally's relationship was very pivotal. Pivotal. Yeah, I'm fucking up my
pivotal.
Yes, I'm fucking up my own. Acceptance speech. No. No, Sonic and Sally's like relationship was very pivotal to me as a person growing up. So actually revisiting it, it's kind of like jaw-dropping for myself, just kind of watching some of these episodes and kind of understanding, like, did I base some of my decisions in my life on this show? Like, like a 90s show that has like no, I mean, it's like any other show. It just has the same sort of philosophy as anything else. I mean, sure, it was well developed and everything, but it has a very special place, in my heart for me. This one, I can't say the same thing about Sonic X, and that's the next show we're doing. But like those mushrooms that I hated years ago, I'm gonna give it a chance.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah. Definitely.
I mean, I don't know. I guess, Jake, for yourself, is there any like legacy that you think that SatAM carries for you?
Yes. What'd you say?
Do you think there's like any legacy that SatAM carries for you? Like, what sort of legacy has it brought the greater world?
The idea, I think, like, honestly, one of SatAM's greatest legacies is the fact that it never got a conclusion, and yet fans have continued to push for one.
That is true. Yes.
And continue to talk about these characters, even though, they haven't been around for a long time. I think that's a great legacy to have. Even though it's been forgotten by most, it's still trucking along because people care about it.
That's pretty well said as well. Malzo, what do you think about this? What sort of legacy does this show have?
Well, I think, the legacy of SatAM is its legacy, I'm trying to phrase this the right way.
I'm putting you on the spot.
I would say this: the long tenured success of Archie Sonic, whether it was under Gallagher, Bowlers, Ken, Ian, Aaliyah, Evan, all the writers, Dan Slott even,
Yeah.
all of that 20 plus years, it's still what holds the Guinness World Records for longest video game comic book, and the fact that, it was able to survive the various lawsuits, all the bumbling on Archie's part, all bumbling on Sega's part, that legacy and all the fans who hold that near to their heart, that garden is planted on the foundation of SatAM. SatAM's legacy is as long, its legacy is as long as Sonic. And, the fact that we are still talking about it, the fact that there are fan groups still singing its praises, making animated sequels, hosting podcasts, drawing fan art. It's just one of those things where there's a lot of passionate fans behind it, and I wish younger Sonic fans, newer generation Sonic fans, and I wish Sega themselves would just say, let's throw these guys a bone and acknowledge them. Like, some things have gone, come and gone, absolutely. And, as much as we'd like certain things back and certain things the way they used to be, they're not. It's not going to happen. But, the legacy of it all is that this was a highly influential show that helped, define Sonic, at least, from Western's perspective, where it was at, where it was most popular. Because, again, Sonic's not super popular in Japan, despite a lot of people's, thoughts otherwise. Yeah. But, yeah, for a while it was Sonic. Jaleel White was Sonic. Jim Cummings, Rose Robotnik. These are
my favorite. Jaleel and Ben are tied for my favorite Sonics.
Maybe that's one day. That's something we should do on if we ever need a topic, is we can rank various character performances, because I think, for me personally, Jaleel is great, but I think I just associate him very much with any Sonic from the 90s. Like, he's 90s Sonic to me. Because I also think Sonic has evolved. He's not what he used to be, and he's going to keep evolving as he goes on.
Definitely.
And that's a good thing. That's absolutely a good thing.
I didn't 100%. Watch that interview with Jaleel White that recently came out, and they asked him about like voicing Sonic, and he said he didn't want the job at first. Did you listen to that?
He was interviewing with... Okay, so Jaleel's kind of had a bit of a resurgence lately. He was doing an interview with Christian Harloff, who's a YouTube movie guy. I watch his stuff a lot. He's a really, really smart guy. And he was kind of... Because I guess Jaleel just put out a book, and he was doing, some little, promotion for it. And, Christian was asking him this question. He says, like, hey, I know... Because this is right around the time, Sonic Movie 3's, production, it was like a month out from coming out. So, all the, marketing was starting to flood things. And he says, I'd be remiss, and I know a lot of people asked about, your experiences for Sonic. And he says, yeah, well, Sonic was the job I didn't want, but the job that I needed. And because he kind of ultimately, the whole thing was his side gig. Like, oh, I'll voice, this character, blah, blah, blah. But he says he wouldn't, it's been such a great experience to him, how, it's carried all through his career, any conventions, all Sonic fans love coming up to say hello. So, he has really fond memories of it. I mean, yeah, obviously Urkel was what he's mostly known for, and that was his main gig, but, he voiced Sonic for darn near a decade. From... from 93 to about 99, so you got a good 6-year run with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did hear, and then again, I don't know if this was correct, but if, there were some discussions whether if they were going to have classic Sonic speak in Sonic Generations. I think there were some thoughts of they wanted to get Jaleel to voice classic Sonic. I don't know how true of that is it or not, but
that'd be awesome. I'd be aboard in that. Yeah. Jake, is there anything you wanted to say before we had to get going here?
So smash that subscribe button, click that like button. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, that's what you got to say in this economy nowadays.
Nah, but if you want to check out my stuff, I'm good old Groovy Jake on YouTube, possibly Groovy Jake at some point, if I ever decide to change the name. But and my Twitter is @SatAM Historian.
Okay. Melzo, was there any other questions you had or anything else you want to talk about before
No, I mean, I think
we
we
lead
kind
to a
of,
close?
I think pretty much
Yeah.
again,
Sorry if I was a little
this is a
quiet.
show. Oh
No, not at
no,
all.
no,
We went places. We got
we went
mysteries.
places.
We out mysteried the SatAM historian. I feel good today.
What up, gang?
But again, I think at the end of the day, this is a show. It means a lot, to very of us, whether it's just a hobby, a profession, and all that fun stuff. But I think at the end of the day, I think the Sonic fandom is very much better for the show. Um, I gotta admit, I'm as much as I'm not interested in. Well, I shouldn't say I'm not interested. I'm intrigued to start the Sonic X rewatch just because I mean, I remember when that came out because I was older. I remember watching it and just kind of going, eh. But at the same time, what that show was for a lot of people is what SatAM for us, and I do want to give them their due diligence and their respect.
100%. I remember watching a bit of Sonic X when I was a kid, though the only episode that really sticks in my mind is the one where with the girl in the wheelchair. I don't know if you guys have seen that
That's
episode or
one of the
not. I'll
it's
explain
one
it.
of the
Yeah.
earlier ones. Like I think
Yeah.
it's like the first 10 episodes.
Yeah, it was a really sweet episode from what I remember.
Yeah, I guess
Emily, what's her name?
that's one thing I've kind of warned our listeners about. I have a lot of thoughts about that episode and other episodes, and a lot of it has to do with heavy philosophy topics. And I know that's how you get all the. I guess maybe this would be a good thing. We get all the kids out of the room, where I talk about heavy philosophy Sonics, heavy philosophy topics. Because Sonic, the way he's portrayed in Sonic X, he's a lot more angelic, and he's less human. Because I would argue in the SatAM, he has more of these like existential beliefs, whereas like in Sonic X, he's the Deus Ex on top of the house or in the field, and they only really call upon him when they need him. And he has like a lot of whereas like in SatAM, he has a lot more of a philosophy of doing things for the greater good, or doing things for for kind, not mankind, obviously.
Fighting the bad guy.
Yeah, find the
He's
bad
fighting the bad.
guy, protect the environment, all very kind of humanist kind of ideals at the time. And there's not too much heavy philosophy. Sure, I could go into like existentialism and talk about that with SatAM, but I don't really find it that interesting. Whereas with Sonic X, I kind of find his angelicism kind of biblical in a weird way, to the point where he has this sort of philosophy of like, because he doesn't seem human in that one. And so I'm kind of really interested to explore some of that personally.
He's more of a plot device than a character.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um
I like when Sonic's a character, like in the movies. That's just me.
I've personally come to the opinion that I prefer when Sonic is a bit more, I guess, human in a way, like with SatAM and with the movies.
yes.
But I'm perfectly fine with him being a bit more of a source of good in general. Because like I don't know. I didn't really get the whole appeal of the shonen protagonist that's like doesn't really change, is more makes other people better by being himself, until I watched Mashal recently, and then I was like, oh, I get it. That's why people like Sonic. That's why people like that take on Sonic.
Wait,
So I'm fine with both
until you
personally.
watched what? Say that again?
Mashal. I don't know if you've seen it. It's
What's
an anime.
that? Okay.
Basically, the
I'm
idea is
familiar with that one.
essentially it's about a guy, well, essentially in a world full of magic people. Think sort of the best way I can describe it is imagine Harry Potter if the main character was a guy who didn't have magic but had hella gains and
Okay.
just wanted to his goal is so simple in the show. It's just to
Well,
become
it almost sounds like early My Hero Academia. You know, whole world's got powers, and you know our main hero doesn't have powers.
the thing is, that's the thing though, is that he does, like, his muscles are his powers.
Okay.
And I think it's really fun because the thing about Mashal is he does have a small arc throughout the show, but most of the time he's kind of just defaulting as this good person who is very dumb but is very kind-hearted. And I kind of realized that that's one of the reasons why people like static character Sonic, because it's kind of the same thing of like he's just a good person and he makes everyone's life better by being in it. And I feel that in some ways that's kind of what Sonic is in those takes.
Well,
So
you know,
I've come to appreciate that.
yeah, you're absolutely right, and also it's one thing that I've talked to Radrey about is that different mediums require different writing styles. Like a video game that is always intended to be kind of a standalone adventure that can basically be a longtime fan's next game, but is also on the flip side a new time fan's first game. Things kind of have to be consistent, where you know the hero, because you can't just do the hero's journey again and again and again in a 30-year franchise. It's rinse and repeat. It's easier to have a video game character be static, but when you get into a serialized cartoon that airs weekly, a monthly comic book, a movie series, you have to have some development. And so that's why I think the writing styles for different things work in different scenarios. So
Yes.
yeah,
Checks out for me. Yeah. Yeah, that's about all I got. Let's see. Anything else on the list?
no.
I think that's probably a good place to end it. Malzilla, what are we ending on? What's the Sonic quote we're
First
ending
off,
on?
I want to
You got something.
say thank you. I just want to say thank you to Jake for joining us for a couple hours and shooting the shit and
problem.
putting up with our random tangents and digressions and pivots, because it's what we do.
Hey,
So
I
again,
caused some of those pivots. Don't take all the credit.
but yeah, thanks for coming on. As always, to our listeners out there, please do follow us on socials, join our Discords if that's what you want. We'd love to have you here. We'd love to talk to you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Alright.
you can find I'll put all of Jake's socials down below if you need to follow him.
Yep.
So until then, I'm Radrey, and you can say I'm Malzilla.
Stay groovy.
All right, yeah. Stay groovy. I like that.
I'm Malzilla, and keep on being way past cool.
Yeah, maybe I'll just end in a Bruce Campbell groovy. It has nothing to do with
That's
this
what I do in
show.
all of my videos.
Okay.
That's what I do in all of my videos.
Okay. All right. And then I guess that's a good place. I guess yeah. We'll say on what is it? We'll say on theme here. Bye.
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 Groovy.